Take-Two boss says good games are the new bad games. Some of our competitors have realized maybe a little late in the day that consumers are not okay with okay. I saw this article the other day and it got me thinking on a lot of things actually. But before I get to that, let's have a read of this article. Amid heightened competitions and expectations in gaming, Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick reckons good games just don't cut it anymore, or as he put it, good is the new bad. Take-Two being the parent company of Rockstar and 2K Games, with Rockstar being GTA and Red Dead Redemption, and then 2K with the 2K sports games like NBA 2K, WWE 2K, and all that jazz. And of course, some of the most high-profile game studios that happen to be under 2K, Gearbox with the Borderlands franchise, Firaxis with a bunch of different IPs, Civilization, XCOM, and even the Marvel's Midnight Suns, if you guys remember that. And of course, we have Hangar 13 take on the reins of developing the Mafia franchise and obviously their latest title, Mafia: The Old Country, which just released a few days ago. But probably released to a niche audience, especially when everyone's saving up for GTA 6. Speaking with IGN, Zelnick sizes up the steady rise of AAA development costs and lengthening production timelines. Oh gee, I wonder why you're going through rising development costs and lengthening production times. Definitely not you guys shooting yourselves in the foot, right? Who brought up the idea that higher budgets equate to higher revenue, and the sad part is, while you guys keep making failure after failure, Eastern publishers and game studios are slowly catching up to the level of quality of your AAA titles achieved with a fraction of the budget. This game that you're looking at? It's going to be free, by the way. I think it's a reflection of the fact that as entertainment businesses mature, consumers see quality and everyone realizes that the consumer is highly demanding, and properly so. Again, you guys are shooting yourselves in the foot here. Why do you think consumers are highly demanding better quality video games? Did we just happen to want more naturally? Did the thought just come to us out of thin air? Or is it because, time and time again, mainstream game companies release an overly engineered, extremely hyped up trailer promising the world to us gamers that is going to be the next big game, only for that game to finally release as a mediocre experience, overshadowed by whatever older title your next game is trying to invalidate. To be perfectly clear, I'm not only talking about Take-Two and their subsidiaries here, but the entire gaming landscape. I think it's time for a lot of these AAA companies to understand that the Bethesda game design is an anomaly and you are not Todd Howard. The Fallout and the Elder Scrolls games, despite objectively being mediocre games, often releasing with various performance issues and a whole bundle of bugs, are games that were designed to reach newer audiences rather than cultivate their existing ones. And more often than not, this practice would only serve to alienate your player base, which most often would end up with them complaining about how bad your game is, which would then cause the new player base that you so desperately seek to turn away before they even dip their toes in this game that's supposedly made for them. A prime example of this was the Saints Row remake. It's a game that tried to cater to the modern audiences, god I miss that phrase, only to be met with scorn by the people who actually played the previous Saints Row game. The actual fans of the series. This is also kind of the case for Bethesda, but you just don't hear about it because of various factors. Let me explain. As I said earlier, the mainline Bethesda titles, namely the Elder Scrolls games, are specifically designed to reach newer audiences by turning systems of the previous game into more casual but extremely accessible mechanics. But not to the point that the games are so far removed from each other, but always just enough that the older players could still recognize the DNA of their favorite franchise. And you know what happened when Bethesda made a game that's unrecognizable to their player base? Yeah. And as for Fallout, Bethesda Fallout games started with Fallout 3, but before that, the Fallout franchise was already an established IP, with the original games being Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 by Interplay. And while the original games were top-down CRPGs, Fallout pretty much already had its cult following, which I can imagine were also the first ones to flock towards Fallout 3. And Fallout 3 wasn't even a good game. The movement was floaty, the gunplay sucked, and you can finish the game at level 5 alive, and there's a lot of things you don't get to see if you just focus on pathing towards the main story. But it has this certain unique charm to it that just hasn't been replicated by any other game so far. And I'm pretty sure Bethesda's still figuring out Fallout, because arguably the best Fallout game that actually understood what Fallout is wasn't even made by Bethesda. But this weird game design creates an interesting phenomena. Let's take me for example. I started Elder Scrolls with Morrowind. I have thousands of hours in the game at this point, and ever since, I've also played a lot of Oblivion and a lot of Skyrim. But I can't for the life of me even start to comprehend Daggerfall, let alone Arena. And I feel like that's also the case for most of the franchise's players. I don't think the people who started playing Skyrim can even stomach the faces in Oblivion, and I still think that the people who started with Oblivion and Skyrim that tried to dip their toes into Morrowind still think that the combat of Morrowind is just straight up broken. A lot of these games are really old titles, but I think I know the reason, or at least one of the reasons why they still retain much of their core audiences despite having better, more modern alternatives. And I think it has a lot to do with mods. The Bethesda games are, weirdly enough, really fun sandboxes, and I think a lot of people immediately realized this and tried creating their own little additions, and sometimes even their own entire version of their favorite Bethesda game. The ability to modify your game however you wanted, I think, resulted in these games transcending from being just entertainment into its own thriving culture, with a lot of people banding together, creating, sharing, and collaborating to make new and more fun stuff for their favorite games. So these games never really got superseded by their sequels, which I can imagine is a huge problem for a lot of these AAA companies, because they don't want you playing their older games that they can't really monetize anymore, and instead want you flocking to their latest and greatest. A company that understands this cultural phenomena that gaming isn't just entertainment but is a culture is THQ Nordic. This is a publisher that understands that we gamers want our favorite games to be cultivated, expanded upon, and handled with care, with us, the core audience, in mind, and to not desperately seek out the approval of a very loud minority that don't even play these types of video games by making a perversion of a game that its fans have known and loved. Instead, THQ Nordic has been solidifying its catalog by not only making sequels of their well-known titles, but they're also making remakes out of the cult classics like Gothic and Destroy All Humans, and they're even going as far as updating a lot of the original titles with remasters to seamlessly bring the original experience into modern systems and platforms. This is the kind of service to the community and to the industry, and this is the amount of respect that we gamers want for these elite video game companies to put into our favorite video games. Catering to the consumer's high demand of quality doesn't equate to spending $2 fucking billion on a single fucking video game. I don't think anyone actually gives a shit if the budget is $1 million or $100 million, or even if the budget is a literal cup of coffee. We have seen indie titles shoot past AAA revenues within a freaking month with a budget of fuck all, and even if you argue that they still had to pay $100 to list a game on Steam, then sure, a game with a budget of $100 outgrossed games by multi-billion-dollar companies, and even then, Steam returns the publishing fee after a game sells for $1,000. These corpo people look at video games and all they see is money, which wouldn't be so much of an issue if only they weren't so out of touch with reality. All of you have to understand that a lot of these AAA companies don't cater to you anymore. All they care about is buttering up to their investors while completely forgetting that the fans are the real metric that funds these video games. Without the gamers that they portray as everything being wrong with society, they wouldn't even be on their pedestal to begin with. The very foundation of a video game company is its player base. Without us, you might as well be a dropshipping business. You don't sell video games by predicting revenue and spending millions of dollars on marketing and public sentiment. You sell video games by establishing trust with the gaming community, something that's really being taken for granted by the big dogs of the industry. Moving on. I think some of our competitors have realized maybe a little late in the day that consumers are not okay with okay. Good is the new bad, great is the new great, and our goal here is to make everything exceptional. I mean, to give the guy credit, fair enough. But I think there is a severe lack of understanding here. From their perspective, these are good games. Games that are made with a considerable amount of budget from a high-profile studio published by a high-profile publisher. That's their metric for good games. Our metric for good games are these ones here. Games that offer pretty good but isolated experiences that are not trying to be the next big thing or the ever so sought after forever game. So here's the disconnect. When you introduce a premium AAA $70 or $80 game at this point, it better be the best fucking game ever made. If there's a game made by a high-profile game studio and published by a high-profile publisher with a standard $40 price tag, it at least better be better than games made by smaller, not-so-well-known studios. But what's happening here is that we're getting good games that cost $70 fucking dollars that are way worse experiences than games sold with a $20 price tag. And they have the audacity to call them good games. Fuck out of here. As you would expect from the head of Rockstar's parent company, Zelnick has repeatedly talked up GTA 6 as the best thing since sliced bread, defending the decision to delay the game to maximize quality. Rockstar Games is trying to create the best thing anyone's ever seen in entertainment, he said earlier this year. Shit, they better be. If they made us wait 13 years and spent over $1 billion to make a single video game and they're selling it for $100 a pop, then it better be the single greatest video game ever made in the history of video games, period. And if they do manage to pull it off and actually is the single greatest video game of all time, the price tag doesn't even matter at that point. Name your price. People will sell their house to get their hands on that game, but only if it's the single greatest video game ever made of all time in the history of gaming, period. And as ever, conversations around quality, expectations, and development costs are colored by the scope and price of the games involved. A company as large as Take-Two will see the industry differently and face different risks and opportunity costs than the vast majority of game developers. Even among the AAA bracket, there is only one Rockstar and there's only one GTA. With the amount of budget invested into GTA 6, the time it took to make the game, and the expectations that Take-Two has of Rockstar, I believe that GTA 6 is a make or break for this studio. Fumbling GTA 6 would be the greatest sin this company could make in its entire life cycle. If it so happens that Rockstar doesn't deliver with GTA 6, I doubt the company will get shut down, but they will have to denigrate themselves to a washed up game company, which would mean entire company-wide restructuring and massive layoffs for Rockstar and their affiliated companies, and will be marked in history as the beginning of the death of AAA. That said, his comments seem to parallel topical sentiments regarding reception and saturation in games. Most notably, Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot suggested last month that the industry is a highly competitive environment where players are very sensitive to the quality and content of games. Guillemot argued that the success of a video game depends as much on the efficiency of its development process as on its launch, and listed bashing from the people online as a high-risk factor. You just can't make this up. The memes write themselves. This guy has the gall to blame public sentiment as the high risk factor for Ubisoft games failing. Real talk, GTA back in the day was bashed, called out, shunned by society left and right, but somehow managed to crawl their way up to overwhelming success. A lot of games since then have been branded as outright evil, violent, vulgar, despicable, but was still able to turn public opinion years down the line. Even if you somehow manage to get the entire public opinion to side against you, if you just put out an undeniably good game, it's going to be easier to overturn your reputation. I'm not saying that publicity and reputation isn't important. All I'm saying is if the public is already against you and you give them a shit or even just a mediocre experience, it's going to be harder or even impossible to get back into their good graces and let alone sell whatever it is you're selling. Guillemot added, here we go. The changing perception of the video game industry as a cultural and artistic medium is also leading to an increase in criticism based on ideological or societal considerations, sometimes to the detriment of technical or gameplay aspects. This trend increases the risk of publishers such as Ubisoft of being exposed to controversy relating to social, moral, or identity standards associated with their productions. First off, get off of Twitter. And stop fucking hiring narcissistic, untalented, politically charged, hateful, incompetent, uninspired, gamer-hating, always bitching, irritating, doesn't even play the type of game they're making as developers. And I'm not talking about woke, leftists, LGBT, or people of color in particular. It just so happens that their community is so saturated and filled with a lot of these fucking useless, straight up incompetent, waste of air and space individuals, and I am singling you out. If you're one of these people who do fucking nothing but appropriate the work of others and gloat that you're oh so good and are contributing when you know for a fact that you're completely fucking useless, none of the work that you've done was ever used in a fucking video game, and spent most of your time in the office on the fucking pantry, you know who you are. This wasn't the first time we heard this rhetoric from Ubisoft either. In September 2024, following the less than stellar reception of Star Wars Outlaws, Guillemot mirrored Zelnick's remarks even more closely, arguing that delivering solid quality is no longer enough. What the fuck do you mean solid quality? Get your head out your fucking ass and just fucking play your own game. At least play your fucking game and tell us with a straight face that you delivered a solid quality game. And the problem is, this motherfucker doesn't even play video games. This is the fucking problem. This is the very core of this freaking issue. The plague to every freaking industry there is. We have these freaking people, both in leadership and in employment positions, that don't even consume whatever it is they're making. These people don't even they don't play video games. They're so out of touch with the current state of things that they actually consider Star Wars Outlaws to be a solid quality game. Oh my fucking god. Stop hiring people that don't play video games to make fucking video games. Analyst Matt Piscatella, games lead at Circana, attributes some of this effect to the dominance of accessible live service games. It's like the substitution effect, right? Piscatella told Games Radar Plus, you can go play a game A and pay X dollars to get in the door, or you can just fire up the game you're already playing, your forever game that you've been playing for, in some cases, 7 to 10 years, right? That's the choice people are making now. First off, the forever game isn't subjective. The forever game still doesn't exist yet. It honestly could have been World of Warcraft, but Blizzard failed to expand the game globally and is more concerned about milking every penny from its current player base rather than transforming WoW into the mythical forever game. Hell, the private server Turtle WoW is making more strides in actually improving the core WoW game experience than retail WoW is. And these guys have servers all around the world, while Blizzard WoW still only has servers in the US and EU. So you can't blame a lot of people in unsupported regions for pirating your freaking game. Like, I'd rather be a freaking criminal than fork over $50 for every expansion, while also paying a $15 subscription monthly, all the while suffering from ping that's in the 500s. I'm exaggerating, but 300 ping isn't good either. And as for companies like Ubisoft who are complaining that they can't compete in a competitive market, dude, your failed projects kept trying to compete on an overly saturated playing field without introducing anything new that's substantial to pirate the players of existing juggernauts like Call of Duty or Battlefield. Here's a little tip for you, Ubisoft. You really want to make your own forever game? Create a free-to-play Assassin's Creed game designed like Genshin Impact, Once Human and or the upcoming Where Winds Meet, and run that alongside your premium Assassin's Creed titles like how COD does it with Warzone. Not a competitive online Assassin's Creed game, but a free-to-play live service single-player Assassin's Creed experience that ties together the entire Assassin's Creed franchise. Hell, you can even make it a gacha game that still make a fortune in annual revenue. It would at least get new players one foot into the door and could eventually translate into conversions for your premium Assassin's Creed titles. To all developers out there that are making great games, I firmly believe that you need to remove or at least lessen the barrier to entry to your franchises. This is why I believe that digital piracy of video games is a healthy thing, not just for the people who can only afford to play games that are free, but also for you, the developers, because you are penetrating a potential market by doing absolutely nothing. It's the freest form of advertising that you can ask for. I live in a country that has been neglected in the distribution of video games, and still is to this day, particularly by console companies like Nintendo and PlayStation. For the longest time, my main source of video games was downloading torrents from the Pirate Bay. Not because I have a malicious intention of stealing your intellectual property, but because I had no other means of acquiring video games. And the only freaking alternative is buying games from these street vendors that are selling pirated installers of games, which I think is worse than just outright downloading pirated copies for free. And this accessibility issue also comes down to the pricing of your games. This is proven by the very existence of original pricing in a lot of stores. In my case, I buy a lot of games, both full price and on sale, but if you present me with Dynasty Warriors games that are this expensive, I'll honestly just pirate the game. But I haven't. I don't really bother with that anymore. I just end up not buying them in general, even if I'm actually interested in playing these games. To prove my claim, I currently have 713 games on Steam. I used to have pirated installs of games from Borderlands, Far Cry, Command & Conquer, Age of Empires, Assassin's Creed, the Batman Arkham series, Elder Scrolls Fallout, and so much more over the course of my lifetime. I finished a lot of these games, but even then, just because of my sheer love of these franchises and how I became a huge fan by playing through all of those pirated copies, I ended up buying a lot of these games on Steam once I reached the point in my life where I can actually afford it. And I can imagine myself buying these exact same games for my would-be kids as well, just because of the fact that I enjoyed them for free way back in the day. And a lot of these games I didn't even put any hours into after I bought them, but because I loved them so much when I first played them, these games will be forever on my radar when thinking of what games to play, and more importantly for developers when I'm thinking of what games to buy. So if you're designing video games solely with the idea of making money in mind, you're going about this all wrong. Video game sales are a byproduct of people enjoying video games. Cost, pricing, political messaging, and the wants of your investors are all irrelevant in the bigger picture. Gamers have become so demanding because you engineered them to be that way with E3 reveals, overblown promises, and setting higher and higher standards and expectations. It is not our fault that you couldn't deliver on your promises. We are only responding to the precedent that you have set for yourself. While I've become jaded over the years, I am still hopeful about the future of video games. But I'm not a fanatic that only ever complains about my favorite game. Rather, I also look into the brighter horizons and discover worlds that are worth exploring. I still look into AAA titles and Western-made games, but as someone who isn't living in the isolated Western world of gaming, I am more looking forward to what's in store from companies such as NetEase, who actually understand their audience and are catering to them with respect rather than blaming their audience for their own inadequacies. That's really all I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope you guys get some good realizations out of this topic, and I'm only ever hopeful that game developers moving forward would realize that they have to make video games great again. So what do you guys think about this issue? I'm highly interested in hearing your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below, and I love discussing these things with you guys, so go ahead and feel free to start a discussion in the comment section. Please do leave a like if you like the video and subscribe if you want more content of honest takes on video games and the gaming landscape. It's free and it really helps me out a lot. But until then, bye-bye.
Get your shitty videos right here. Watch more, drop more views. We'll be back with more, so stay tuned to Revo Radio.